So, without any further ado, I just thought I'd give you a little bit of background to why we're holding this event. So for those of you that don't know, today's Carers' Rights Day, and we've had a packed day of events to mark the occasion. And the particular focus this year has been on working carers, and we've had a campaign which highlights 6 rights that carers have, and there's lots of information about that available on the website if you want to have a look at that and you weren't able to join earlier on. This session is a forum question and answer session, and it's part of Forum Focus, which has been a fortnight of activities in the forum that we've started doing because we went out at the point where we passed 40,000 members at Carers UK, which we're incredibly proud of and grateful for. We decided to hold a survey to hear what people wanted from the forum, because that's a big benefit of membership of Carers UK. We had 650 carers generously share their experiences, both of using our forum and other organisations and social media and things like that. And one of the overarching things that people told us was that they really wanted more Carers UK people to come into the forum, sharing information and interacting than we were doing. So we've had a fortnight of daily spotlights, which my colleague Jane has posted on all sorts of different aspects of caring, and they've been really popular. And the big part of it was the opportunity for carers to share your questions and to have them answered by our helpline experts. So next thing I'd like to do is to thank Priya and Liz for joining us, and to maybe introduce yourselves and say a little bit about yourselves. And Priya, you're just beneath me on my screen, so if you wouldn't mind going first, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. So I'm Priya, and I've been working with Carers UK for just over a year now on the helpline, and I've delivered a few share and learn sessions, so you may have seen me in delivering those. Outside of Carers UK, I work for another charity specialising in community care.
Thanks, Priya. Liz, would you mind saying a little bit about yourself?
Of course. Hi, my name's Liz, and like Priya, I work on the advice line. I've been with Carers UK helping and supporting them since around the end of 2017. And again, like Priya, you may have seen me on some share and learn sessions, and I too do work with another charity supporting advice and care to people just like yourself. So I look forward to this evening.
Thanks so much. And in this forum topic, we were fortunate enough to get, I think it was just a little over 25 questions posted, which we won't have the time to answer all of them in this session, but we've selected a good range of questions for our panelists to answer. And anything that we don't answer in this session, we'll be posting answers on the forum as well. So if you've joined, I very much hope that some of you that posted are able to join this evening. If you don't hear your question, do check back and you'll see an answer shortly. So I will kick off with a question from forum member, sorry, that's my dog, forum member Bowling Bun, who is a real star of our forum and has posted over 26,000 posts in support of other carers. And lots of you any of you that have joined the forum and used it have probably interacted with her. And her question is for Priya. Can my parents pay me for looking after them? What if they're not eligible for any care funding?
Okay, so there are a few options with that. Your parents can pay you to look after them if they have eligible care and support needs from their local authority following a needs assessment. So a needs assessment basically looks at all of their care and support needs at home and in the community. If they are eligible, then they can have the choice of having council commissioned care, which is through care agencies, or they can receive direct payments. Direct payments are basically monetary payments given to the service user, which gives more choice and control over how their care needs are met. They can only be used to pay for services which are outlined in the care and support plan, and the direct payment regulations 2014 section 3 does allow recipients of direct payments to pay a family member who lives in the same household. The legal test is basically where it's necessary to do so. So you just have to basically prove that it's necessary for you to be paid out of the direct payments. If your parents have over the £23,250 threshold, then they would need to pay out of their own finances. It's still best to have some sort of contract drawn up between you and the parents, just so that there's, some sort of transparency there. You are likely to be self-employed, so it's also useful to speak with HMRC about a self-assessment so that you pay your tax. And they are quite helpful, so do give them a call if your parents are over the threshold. That's it.
Thanks, Priya. That was a really great answer to that question. I think that a lot of people struggle to know where to start with direct payments. So I think one of the key things you mentioned there was contracts, which are really important in any sort of employment situation. There's often care support with setting up direct payments available in local authorities. Is that something that local authorities have a duty to provide, or does it vary from location by location?
It does vary, because basically with direct payments, you're an employer, so the local authority will just sort of will basically pass the responsibility to you to sort out. But there are third-party companies that they can introduce you to who can manage the admin side of it, because there is a lot of admin with direct payments. Like there's monitoring, there's keeping your receipts, there's quite a bit to it. So they can recommend third-party companies like brokers to sort out the admin side for you, so that you're not too overwhelmed with it all.
That's really good to hear, thank you. And for those of you joining this evening, Matt's posted a link to some direct payments information on our website in the chat there that you can follow. Thanks, Priya. Liz, Elsa 2008 has asked, is there funding available to carers for funeral costs?
Okay, first of all, I just want to say I'm sorry to hear that you're looking at help with funding a funeral. There are different options depending on your wider circumstances, and also between the relationship between the person who has died, or maybe looking at their last few days or months maybe at life. So the first things to start to think about are potentially if there's going to be any help available via the Department of Work and Pensions. So this could be help with funeral cost payments, it may be bereavement payments, and depending on your wider circumstances, these are both subject to eligibility criteria. So that would be something I would always recommend that we look at first. Now, your specific question asked if there was any help within the borough of Enfield. So I did have a look, and as a starting place, and again, I must mention, I don't know much about your wider circumstances. There's an organisation called Charitas Westminster. They cover a lot of boroughs in that area. They offer grants to parishioners in the Westminster area, and they will help with funeral costs. So again, it just depends a little bit more about the wider circumstances. You are able to contact them directly. I think we're going to provide this information, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop how you do that in the chat box, so you've got a bit of an idea. Another source of help potentially could be Carers Enfield, because they might know of any local support, and they could be able to help you fill out any forms and make any applications. I just want to say on a final note, that there are a number of wider charitable organisations nationally, not necessarily based within, your local area. Now here, they will help with things like funeral expenses, but they have set criteria and they would like to know more about the circumstances. So again, you can use something like Turn to Us, and you can explain a little bit about maybe the type of health condition the person had or the disability they had, maybe prior occupations, whether they'd ever served in the armed forces. And this also includes national service, where in the country you live in, for example. And they can take that data and they can try and match up what help and support you need based on that charity's eligibility criteria. Some suggestions may come forward. Some charities you can apply directly to, some you'll need the help of either a carer centre or an advice centre, someone like Citizens Advice. There's another place that you could potentially look, and that could be through a utility provider such as the British Gas Energy Trust, but that would come up if you did a turn to us grant search. So it's quite wide and it's quite broad. There are a few options that you can look into, but again, it depends on circumstances. So I do hope that that is helpful.
That's great, Liz. Thanks so much. And also for answering specifically for Enfield and giving other carers that might be in different areas national options too. That's really useful. Thank you. Priya, Wendy 2103 is in a situation that I think a lot of carers are finding themselves across the country at the moment. And we've seen some campaigns in the press about this one. Her situation, unfortunately, is that she's not seen her mum in a care home for 4 weeks due to staff instances of COVID at the moment. She was wondering what rights she's got to visitations.
I'm sorry to hear that, Wendy. I can appreciate how difficult that must be. I think the best thing to do first is to ask the care home for their policy in their response to COVID, so that you can see what they're doing and what sort of measures they're taking. They are obviously doing this for the safety of everyone, and it's just unfortunate that that this has happened. And in relation to the lift, which was broken down, I mean, we obviously don't know all the circumstances as to why there's a delay in getting it sorted out, but I can only imagine it's a service provider issue. So what I would suggest that you do is maybe speak with the manager of the care home to explain how you're feeling and to see what they're sort of doing to sort of help maintain contact between residents and their families, and to just ask for their policy in their response to COVID, and obviously explain your concerns about the lift as well. But I'm assuming that's not actually this. It might be out of their control, so just maybe cooperate with them on that one. But yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope it gets resolved soon.
Thanks, Priya. I mean, it's always a really good idea to ask people for their policy and to explain exactly what's happening and get further information. Obviously, if a carer is not happy with the response that they get, it's always useful to put together a carefully worded complaint if possible, and there's guidance on our website on how to make a complaint as well, that a lot of carers find quite useful, because if they have to complain in one area of their cared for person's life, they often have to complain in others, unfortunately, over time. So that guide's particularly useful. Thanks, Priya. Liz, Philip 2106 asks, is our government considering abolishing the tax levied on carers allowance? Would you mind summarising what taxable benefits are exactly as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think this question, so I'll start with answering the question first, and please do come back to me and correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're asking if the government has any plans to change the status of carers allowance, which is currently a taxable benefit. So taxable benefits are benefits that you need to declare as income and count towards your tax allowance limit. So a standard tax allowance limit is £12,570. And if you have no other sources of taxable income, so maybe all your income comes from disability living allowance, or maybe personal independence payment, or attendance allowance, they're non-taxable benefits. But pretty much most of the other benefits in the welfare system do count towards this tax allowance. So very easily you could find yourself, if you had an occupational pension or maybe a part-time job and you were receiving carers allowance, that actually you could reach that taxable limit and find that you are paying some tax. Now, going back to the original question, now, has the government got any plans to change the status of carers allowance to bring it more in line with these disability benefits that are non-taxable? I'm going to be honest, I'm afraid that the short answer to this would be not, as far as I'm aware. I have done some research into it. I looked at proposed changes. I can't see anything that says that this is likely to happen. Maybe it could be a policy idea for us. I'm just going to put it out there for those of you who are listening. But what I would say is that this, and I would strongly encourage you and other carers who are in this similar position, would be to raise this with your MP. Okay, let them know that actually this money is affecting your wider taxable circumstances, and it could be that you do have an occupational pension. That means that you have to start to pay tax, so the amount of money you're receiving is actually lessened because of the status of carers allowance. I don't know if we're going to, I have got a link here, so I'll pop it into the chat box for those of you who are not quite sure how to find your MP or how to get in touch with them and raise this. And what's really good when you get in touch with your MP is that you can give your experience of how this is impacting on you and what effect it is having. So I would love to say in the future that carers allowance wouldn't be classed as a taxable benefit, but apart from disability benefits, pretty much all of the benefits should be included when you're calculating your income for that year. And it could be that actually you need to declare it and pay some tax if it's over that. Sorry, I don't have a more happy answer to that one, I'm afraid, Arron.
No, thank you, Liz. That's really great to get an overview of it. And thanks for doing some research into it as well. Great suggestion about contacting MPs, because bringing these lived experiences of carers to life for MPs has been shown to have a real impact on how they view the cause and the issue. So thanks so much for making that suggestion. The next question comes from Jill 2111. Now, she's had a particularly difficult time with a bank who she feels indirectly discriminated against her by refusing an account to her as a carer due to their financial circumstances. She was refused help to challenge this by a third-party organisation set up to make equality type challenges and support those sorts of things, as it's not a protected characteristic. How can these decisions be challenged?
Okay, firstly, sorry to hear that, Jill, what's happened. I can appreciate that, must have been quite stressful. The protected characteristics are listed in the Equality Act 2010 under section 4, and they are age, disability, gender reassignment, marriage and civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, race, religion or belief, sex, and sexual orientation. This sort of dispute is discrimination within goods and services, because the bank is a service. And so what I hope the service that you had already contacted is not the one I'm going to mention right now. It's the Equality Advisory Support Service. They sort of give free advice on Equality Act claims. There is also legal aid available in sort of challenging these decisions. You can get a solicitor or a caseworker to look at your case for you and, you know, tell you whether you have a case or not. They'll look at your merits to see whether it's successful. In your sort of web browser, if you type in find a legal aid advisor or family mediator, I'll just put it in the chat box. You can basically search for legal aid advisors in your area. And if you just type in your postcode and choose discrimination as the category of law, you can look for firms local to you and discuss your case with them. I mean, if you didn't want to go down the legal route, you could also put in a complaint to the bank. You can also sort of, I mean, going to the media is a little bit over the top, but I mean, some people do go there. So you could also, you could also do that. You can raise awareness by, trying to see if other people are affected by this. I mean, the other thing is I can see that the issue is down to their processes and procedures. So again, it comes down to getting their policy on setting up bank accounts, like what is their criteria for people to access a bank account. And it might be an issue with their actual policy that's wrong, that's unlawful. So again, it comes down to discrimination, which a solicitor or caseworker can look at and tell you whether you've got a case or not. So before you approach for further help on this, get a copy of their policy, which might be available on their website. If it's not, then just contact them and ask for it. I hope it gets resolved. Sorry to hear that happened.
Thanks, Priya. For people that haven't approached a solicitor for support before. You mentioned that they would make an assessment as to whether the case has merits. Would you mind just explaining a little about what that is exactly?
Yeah, so what they'll do is they'll basically sort of have an initial discussion with you just to find out what's gone on. They will maybe ask for some paperwork as well, just to see what the other side's response is. And they'll basically make a sort of a decision as to whether they can look into it or not. They might actually open a file for you to investigate so that they can spend that time to fully look into all the issues and then advise you. So looking at merits is basically looking at all the paperwork that you have and then giving you advice. And if you go through legal aid, it means that you may not have to pay for legal fees. So it's always worth checking if you're eligible.
Thanks for clarifying, that's great. And as with the previous matter that we discussed, often making a complaint is a process that you can go down, and Carers UK's guidance on that could be really useful in this situation as well. So that's something that a lot of carers have found useful. Liz, the next question's for you. It's from Kiki2108. Unfortunately, they're really worried about finances when giving up work to become a full-time live-in carer for her parents. I think that's something that's sort of on the horizon for her at the moment. There's limited savings, and she's wondering, what if the parents needed to sell their house to fund their care? What could she do to maximise her income in this situation? She's saying particularly it feels for her like a really frightening catch-22 at the moment.
No, I was just checking. I was off mute. Hello, yeah, I can absolutely completely understand that this may be a worrying and frightening time, and the future may look very uncertain. But I just want you to know before I start to answer your question that you really are not alone, and just thank you for stepping forward and sharing your concerns and worries with us. Now, your question, it does contain a few different elements. So to start with, you talk about your finances. Now, everyone's financial situation is different. So what I would always suggest and encourage you is to get in touch. We're very happy on the helpline to carry out a welfare benefit check for you. This check will look at, what particular benefits you may be able to claim. Is there going to be any help and support with council tax? If you rent your home with your rent, for example, we'll look at things like, as a carer, are you eligible to claim carers allowance? So we ask a wide range of questions around both your current financial circumstances and then who else lives in your household with you, so your wider household circumstances. And we look to see what eligibility you may have. We explain that to you in a way so you can see how things are going to look. And then what we'll do is we'll go through the claiming process with you. We'll explain how to start the claim, what's going to happen, how long potentially you can expect it to last. And we can do that before you leave work. So it'll give you a chance to see, what things would look like, and then you can compare it to your current circumstances. So you can have a look and see what that is. On a secondary note, it's linked together. You ask about maximising your parents' income. And again, in order to make sure that they're not missing out, they too should have a benefit check. They could be missing out financially. We see a lot of inquiries that come through the helpline where people are considering leaving work to provide care and support to their parents or maybe to a child. Now, their parents or potentially their children may not be in receipt of a disability benefit. Now, a disability benefit is one that it's non-means tested, so anyone can claim it as long as they meet set eligibility. It doesn't look at income, it doesn't look at savings, it doesn't look at wider circumstances to do with your finance. It's very much based on eligibility criteria for personal care, and for some of the disability benefits about your ability to be able to mobilise and get around. In order for you to be recognised as a carer within the welfare benefit system, which would help your circumstances, the person you're providing care for, so your parents, for example, needs to be getting a disability benefit. So that would be a starting point. We could look at that now. It doesn't need to wait until the time comes. Now, alongside making sure they're not missing out financially, we would always suggest as well, and Priya mentioned it a little bit earlier on, things like a needs assessment and also a carers assessment. So a needs assessment will check to see what support is needed, and then a financial assessment that's linked to that can then look at things like direct payments. So it all interlinks very nicely together, but there's a lot of different steps you have to consider. Now, the one thing that came out very strongly in your question was what would happen if your parents had to sell the house, their savings become depleted. Now, this question, it's a little bit more difficult for me to answer. So as you may be aware, there's been a lot of news around this, that there are a lot of changes ahead in terms of how much someone will be expected to contribute towards their care. And again, this is going to depend on the wider circumstances. There's a lot of change ahead. So when or if this time comes, I would suggest that you get in touch again with one of our community care advisors, such as Priya, and they will be really happy to explain the process and what options, you know, your parents have. So it's a little bit vague, that answer, because there are so many things dependent on time and wider circumstances. But I know that Priya and the community care team would be able to help and explain that. So there are quite a few things that you can look at now in terms of maximising both yours and your parents' income, making sure you're not missing out at all currently. We can do what's called a change of circumstance check, so you can compare what things would look like. And then we've got the wider circumstances about needs and support that your parents may have, and then moving on to community care issues in terms of how would this care be funded, what would it be expected to be contributed. And that really just does depend on when that care change does happen at the moment. So our Looking After Someone guide, there'll probably be a link come up to it. Covers a lot of immediate questions, but please do feel free to get in touch with either myself or Priya, and we will be happy to help where we can.
Thanks so much, Liz. There's actually, circling back to a previous question, because there's quite a lot in the chat at the moment about people's differing experiences of contacting their MPs. Some people saying that they're getting some really good support, others saying that it's next to useless, and, you know, wondering sort of why bother, really. Do you either of you have anything to add around sort of the differences between sort of writing or emailing to your MP versus attending a surgery, or anything, experiences like that? What might be more effective?
Yeah, I think it's useful to see your MP in person, because you build a bit more of a rapport with the MP, and they can really take into account what you're going through in person. I'm not sure if MPs are sort of doing face-to-face visits at the moment, but you can do a video call. That's something you can maybe suggest. Yeah, but I have heard as well that MPs, it differs the support that you get, because it just depends on the MP, really, unfortunately. But what I would probably suggest is you usually get through to the MP's secretary first anyway. So it's just about sort of not giving up and just sort of really pushing through and explaining, you know, the issues. You can also maybe go through your GP. If you've got a good relationship with your GP, you can ask your GP to write to your MP, because maybe that might be better. Or you can, get some help from a trusted friend or family member to help you write to your MP to get your views across in the way that you want to.
Thanks, Priya. The self-advocacy guide that we've developed at Carers UK sort of can help with sort of exactly what you just said, putting your point across and how to make sure that you're understood and your views are heard, and asking a trusted sort of friend, family member, if you've got a good GP or any of those sorts of contacts, great place to start. So thank you, Priya. I know some people go through to their MP, and sometimes they see like a constituency caseworker instead, and sometimes that can actually be a better or more helpful experience than some MPs. So I don't think people should be put off if they don't get directly through to them at the first time as well. Use all of those contacts as, try to exploit them and see what you can get from each of those routes that you can go down, I think is is the answer to that. But the self-advocacy tool's just gone in the chat as well for everybody. The next question is for you as well, Priya. It's from Antonia2110. She asks, where or how can you get respite for carers? Meaning she really wants somewhere to go for a break, to decompress and have space to breathe, which we hear so often from carers that is something that they really want to do. It's never a straightforward thing. It's not purely financial. It's often about arranging care for your cared for person while you're enjoying respite as well. And this was a very early question in the chat. So I know somebody watching is going to be interested in your answer to this.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would first suggest that you get what is called a carer's assessment, because it's basically your opportunity to let the local authority know or trust know that what your caring role is and what support you need in your role, you know, what help you need outside of that and what your other responsibilities are. We have really useful information on our website about carers assessments and what it basically is, and all the information that is supposed to be taken into account. And so basically the carers assessment will identify the fact that you need a break from your caring role, and the local authority can hopefully suggest some useful services in your area where you can take a break, and they'll give you they'll basically give you a break from your caring role by arranging, you know, a carer to look after your loved ones, or you can use direct payments and arrange your own care for your loved ones. You could also, during the carers assessment, it's really important that you get across exactly what you're going through, and it can be quite overwhelming, because you're basically having somebody coming into your home and asking you a bunch of personal questions. So you can ask the local authority social worker for the questions that will be asked ahead of time. So that gives you time to prepare your answers, and you know, basically gives you that space to make sure that you're telling them everything. It's important that you also disclose any health conditions that you have, as well as any impact on your well-being. And the care and support eligibility criteria regulations lists out all the outcomes that need to be explored. So I'll just put that in the chat for you. And it basically goes into your sort of employment. It will look at your other responsibilities that you might be caring for somebody else. So that it's useful to make sure that that's all covered, and it will basically give them a more holistic view of what you need. You can also look into local support in your area to see how they can help. That's basically like local caring support groups that can give you advice and information. They might themselves offer respite care services, because it's important to note that the carers assessment is useful, but it can take time to complete. So your access to services might take longer. So you can try and contact local carer groups and services to see whether they can help you, and you can get that from that link I've just posted. And yeah, we also have a supporting you to take a break fact sheet on our website as well, which is really useful. It explains all the different respite care services, because respite can be different for everybody. It depends on what is suitable for you. You might want somebody in your home whilst you take a break, or you might want to send your loved ones to a day centre, or a residential short stay. There's lots of different options available to you, and that's the purpose of the carers assessment, to look at what is useful for you to have.
Thanks for summarising that, Priya. And yes, I think what you touched on at the end is very true. There's lots of different forms that respite can take, and often it depends on individual circumstances, whether you're caring for somebody and there are other family members around as well, and everybody needs a break. What's the best course of action? So the guide does give a lot of options and a bit more understanding, as well as linking in with local groups. There's also quite a few charities that help out with connecting people with lower cost breaks and respite activities and things like that. So a bit of research in this area should help with some of the options, and Priya, your advice about the funding for it and the assessment process will hopefully get Antonia along the way. So thank you very much for that. I also have a follow-up question from Antonia for you, Priya. This one it's a really brave question for her to have asked, I have to say. It's something that we hear a great deal from carers, but it's a very difficult point to articulate. So I really appreciate her sharing this with us. But she asks, what happens if she can't or doesn't want to be a carer anymore? She's exhausted and didn't sign up to lose her life in the process. Who would care for her mum if she can't?
Well, thanks for sharing that with us. I'm sorry to hear that you're feeling this way. I mean, it comes back to the carer's assessment, because that also identifies whether it is appropriate for you to continue providing care. It's a very sort of full assessment holistically, which looks at all of your circumstances, and the outcome may be that actually you can't provide care anymore. We're going to come in and help you. So that's a discussion that you need to have with your local authority as soon as possible, urgently if you can. You know, speak to your GP about how you're feeling as well. They can write a supporting letter in support of you to take a break, to have services in place to look after your mum. And I mean, what the local authority will look at is whether your mum has social care needs or healthcare needs, or whether she has a mixture of both. If she has social care needs, then they'll carry out a needs assessment, and that will look at all of her care and support needs at home, like her washing, cleaning, getting around, that sort of thing. Does she need equipment or adaptations? They'll get an occupational therapist involved. If she has healthcare needs, then they will look at providing an NHS continuing healthcare assessment for her. It's possible that your mum can have both health and social care needs, and it's possible that both can fund it. So it's basically, the starting point is for you to approach your local authority adult social care team as soon as possible to start arranging this, as well as your own carer's assessment as well, so that that process can start.
Thanks, Priya. I think that's really great advice. And for Antonio, I just wanted to also share that I hope you're finding the forum a really helpful and supportive environment, because I know that's a very safe space that carers can articulate some of these feelings and be heard by their peers who understand exactly where you're coming from. The other thing I just wanted to mention is that some carers that are feeling this way have benefited from using our listening support service. So we're not currently taking on new carers, but we will be in the new year. So you're able to register your interest on the website if that's something that you think would help you. And that's a course of up to 4 telephone calls, which are, again, a really safe space. It's volunteer led. And everyone's highly trained to be able to listen to what you're going through while you talk through anything ranging from everything that you just expressed in your question through to the practicalities and challenges that you're experiencing day to day, and anything in between, hobbies, interests. Nothing's off topic. So a lot of carers have really benefited from that, and we've been getting great feedback from it. So you'd be more than welcome to join that if it would be useful to you. We have a question from Vinod. He's got the hand up.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Hi. I think I've just heard Priya and Liz mentioning about various assessments, like carer needs assessment or disabled child's assessment or family assessment or basically young siblings assessment. In past, when I asked, like I have, we are just 2 adults, my wife and myself, and 2 twins. One of them has additional, has got complex health needs, and the other twin child has no needs. So in past, I have asked for all these assessment to the local authority and the social worker, They kept telling me that they have done these assessment, but they never gave me a copy of the assessment. I did ask and send them a snippet from, I think, for gov.uk. I found that they need to send us a copy of the assessment, but I followed them for a year by sending those snippets. They never gave me any copy, and I've asked them, can you give me an individual assessment that you have carried out? They kept pointing me to a document saying, this is your short break plan, go to this page, and this is the information that we have actually after the assessment we have put down. And I said, this is not what I'm asking. I'm asking for the copy of assessment. What assessment you have done as part of those 4 or 5 assessment? They never gave me. It has been more than a year and a half I've been asking them, but I got tired and I have moved out of the county now. But it's just a transition phase. I've just moved to another county, and I don't know how it will look like. But what is your advice on this if they don't provide us the outcome? And we literally for last 2.5 years, they haven't increased the level of support that we requested. Hence, I was asking for those outcomes of the assessment, and they never provided that. They kept giving us, saying us, this is your package. You can't get more than this. But we never received the package that they have written on the short break review plan.
You can do a subject access request for the file of the person that had the assessment, and that's basically an SAR, and the local authority have to basically give all information they have on the person within 1 month. Local authorities, I'm seeing a lot recently that they're using their power to extend that by another 2 months because they're allowed to under the Data Protection Act. So I hope that doesn't happen again, but that you can put in a subject access request to the local authority data protection team to say, can I have my file or my child's file? And that should have in it the assessments. If you do get that back and it doesn't have it in there, then there's the question of where's your information gone. I mean, that's quite a long time you've had to wait. You could also put in a complaint as well about the failure for them to respond on time. You are entitled to a copy of the assessment.
I did raise a complaint just in around July or August time this year. And then after they investigated the complaint and they came back saying, okay, we'll do a early assessment, which they did on 27th of October, saying instead of having the short break review plan in Feb, we are doing an early reassessment. And I said, that's fine. And the following week, I moved out of the county to a different place. Then I informed them, and they said they will transfer all the information to the new county social worker. And I did ask, can you provide me the reassessment, the early assessment copies as well? Or they haven't given me any information till date. I don't know whether they have transferred that to the new social worker or not. But as you say, I will request them the SAR request, as you mentioned. I can still ask for the data that they hold on my son's file with old county. I can do that, right? I do have right to ask for that information, even if I have moved the county. Am I right in saying that?
I'm not too sure, actually. I think the best thing to do is to speak with the Information Commissioner's Office, because they give all advice and information about data, and they'll definitely be able to answer that question for you, whether you're still entitled to that information when you've moved out of their borough. But they are definitely meant to send over the information to your new borough. So that's definite. They should provide all that information to your new local authority. So maybe just sort of pressure your social worker to give them a bit of a deadline there to get the information.
I have kept them on loop, both new social worker, old social worker, and the new bosses, managers and stuff. But they haven't sent the information across, and we are still struggling for receiving the support in the new county. It has been a month since we have moved to new county, and we have got no respite in the new county, nothing, because we have got no visibility where the documents are. the new social worker has done the initial bits of assessment, but he doesn't have any copies. But we have communicated, and we have linked both social worker by communicating on email, sharing their contact details, everything that as a parent we have done. But we haven't heard anything from social care perspective, and we are still requesting the old county to provide the respite, because we are not receiving anything from the new county. So we have to still take our son for a respite at the old county, and luckily they have extended for this month till November end, but we don't have any visibility about December. What will the support look like? And both parents, we are not feeling well. We had got health issues. So, and there is no one in UK to support us, and the authorities are aware of the situation. So, sorry, I've taken a lot of time here, but this is what I thought, because of the carer assessments and everything that I was hearing. I thought I've done these, but still I'm not getting anywhere. Just thought to get some insight from the experts here.
Oh no, not at all, Vinod. It's this is your space to speak, and I'm really glad that you're sharing it with us. I mean, it does sound quite complex, and there's a lot of different issues in here. So I would suggest that you look into getting a caseworker or a solicitor to help you to ease off that, to just take away that pressure for you, because you're constantly on their back. So maybe you can get somebody to help you with that communication, so that you take a step back from it a bit now. And it might help things move a bit quicker if you've got some sort of legal position there to sort of get them to do what they're supposed to be doing, but which there doesn't seem like they're doing anything. So do look into that, because it might help moving forward.
I did try last year to get support from a legal firm, but they were running short of solicitors because of, I don't know, COVID issues or whatever. So we had a couple of issues, like an accident with my son, a carer, a negligence, I can say. There was an accident and my son broke his elbow. So we did try to get support, and we also tried to get support in the social care area as well. But none of the solicitor firm, I mean, they are big firms, but they didn't have any bandwidth to provide that, support. So I don't know if you have any firms which are associated with Carers UK and who are happy to look into this. I'm happy to contact them offline.
Yeah, if you can email us, and I can email you back with some useful information for you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, cheers.
Thank you so much for your question, Vinod. There's also some links in the chat of where you can go to try and get some help with accessing that information and putting in a subject access request. So, as Priya mentioned, the Information Commissioner's Office is a good starting point to the rights to the information and how to access it. So that's in there for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And the next question is for Liz. It's from Winnie14. Her husband's been assessed for a Scottish council tax reduction, but the GP actually found that he didn't meet the criteria of being severely mentally impaired. That's despite having to reduce now to working just 2 days per week from full time, and with a lot of support from Winnie in order to manage to continue to be employed. The GP's adamant that her decision's final, but Winnie feels that other people in a similar position have had the support of their healthcare professional. What could she do next to challenge this?
This must be an incredibly frustrating situation for you both, especially if you know someone in a similar position who has had a very different outcome for yourself. Now, the difficulty is, and you mentioned it, was quite a long question that you put, and in your question you did mention that you'd looked at the legislation that the council have shown on their website, and it's a bit woolly, I think your words were, and you're absolutely right. The legislation definition for someone who is severely and mentally impaired under council tax legislation, which is the Local Government and Finance Act, is woolly. It is a bit wishy-washy, and it's not at all clear. Basically, it says that in relation to council tax, a person can be classed as severely and mentally impaired if they have a severe impairment of intelligence and social functioning, however caused, which appears to be permanent. So this is likely to include people with brain conditions such as dementia, Alzheimer's. I have known cases of severe depression, anxiety, etc. But it's very open to interpretation. So you ask, what is it that you can do? Okay, so what does this mean? As there is no actual medical definition for a registered medical practitioner, other than their opinion of a person's health condition and how it impacts on someone's social functioning and intelligence, when this comes to council tax, what I would say that this is completely different legislation to the Mental Health Act when considering someone's ability to function and support that they may be legally needing, such as an enforced hospital stay. This is completely different. This is not the same definition and it's not the same legislation at all. We are back to this woolly, if a person has a severe impairment of intelligence, which appears to be permanent. So this is very open to that GP's interpretation. So it could be, moving forward, if this GP isn't going to be supportive, the first step potentially is, has your husband had any other involvement with any doctors or anyone involved in any treatment or support plans that he may have? This could be people who are supporting his mental health. It could be another GP. It doesn't necessarily need to be that GP that you've already seen. I just want to mention a couple of other points. I'm sure you've already know that you've got to be in receipt of a qualifying benefit. So your husband needs to be in receipt of a disability benefit, for example. But what you may not know is that if you find a GP who is happy to sign the certification that is needed for someone to be classed as severely mentally impaired in terms of council tax reduction, that if they backdate that to a date of diagnosis, for example, you can go back 6 years and have this applied to your council tax bill for 6 years, as long as they were receiving that disability benefit during the time and somebody signs that medical declaration. So it could be that if this person wasn't helpful, that you look at someone else. I mean, the next line of attack potentially would be making a formal complaint about your GP, but that might be something you would want to think about if generally they are supportive and have a good understanding, you know, of your husband's situation. All I can say is it must be incredibly frustrating, and I do completely understand, especially if you know someone in a similar situation, but it is open to that medical professional's interpretation, I'm afraid. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Liz. That was really useful. And I think if from a patient's perspective, I think it's really important that people have a good relationship with their GP, particularly if you have a complex situation where you're caring and your husband has has mental health difficulties that are obviously quite severe. And you know, one course of action could be to switch GPs entirely. It is people's right to move to a different GP practice where hopefully you would have a better service if your existing GP isn't willing to bend or to consider what you're saying. So always an option that people can explore, I guess. We have one more question. We're almost at the end of the session, but Liz, if you don't mind giving a really swift answer to a short, punchy question, that would be fantastic to squeeze it in.
Oh, I can try, Arron, I can try.
Thank you so much. I hope Audrey will see this and appreciate us squeezing it in. She asked, why can't I receive carer's allowance? I'm a 75-year-old parent carer. See, I said it was a short one.
It is. We get asked this so many times. I'm afraid the answer is long, but I'll try and condense it. Under the current rules for carer's allowance, if you're receiving a state retirement pension, you can no longer claim and be paid the carer's allowance benefit if your state pension amount is more than carer's allowance. So if your state pension is more than £67.70 a week, you can't be paid both. This is because they fall into the same category of benefit, and this is known as a work replacement benefit. One replaces work due to having a caring role and one replaces work due to retirement. Because they both fall in the same category, they cannot both be paid at the same time. This is known as overlapping benefit rules, if you want to have a little look into it. It's not that carers allowance can only be paid to people in work. That's just not true at all. It falls in the same category as the state retirement pension. However, when you do start to get your pension, all is not completely lost. You could retain something called underlying entitlement, which could allow you to access further help and support through the means tested benefit system. So maybe something like help with the council tax, maybe pension credit. It's not a standalone benefit, the underlying entitlement. It links into other benefits. And on that note, we would always recommend you have a benefit check just to check that you're not missing out by doing that. And as well, we are running, I'll say the good one first. We are running a Fairer for Carers campaign, which you might want to link into if you haven't already, and this addresses some of these concerns. But also, again, I'm going to hide under my desk here. This is something we should really be raising with our MPs. We need to raise this. We need to get it out there. It's just not right. There is nothing to say that, you know, this can't be continued to be paid. It's just the current benefit rules. Okay, sorry, Arron. I'm back to the MP again.
No, absolutely. I think it all connects with one another, doesn't it? And, you know, Carers UK, we believe that we should be providing support to carers directly, that we should be campaigning on their behalf, and carers should be empowered to campaign about the causes important to them as well. So really appreciate that recommendation and the summary of the answer. That was really helpful. I will draw to a close because we have overrun slightly, but it's been fantastic to see so many questions answered this evening from the forum, and to have, for an evening session for us to have all of the carers that have joined us has been fantastic. I can see there's been some lively debate in the chat and a lot of support to one another, which moves me on to where all of these questions came from. If any of the carers joining us aren't currently forum users or members of Carers UK, my colleague Matt's going to post the Join Us page link so that you can become a member and access the forum. Everyone can look at the forum, but only members can make posts and respond to other carers. So it's a real benefit, and it's something that a lot of people draw a great deal of value from, not just these sorts of sessions that we'll be hopefully doing periodically. But thanks everybody for taking part this evening. Priya and Liz, your answers have been fantastic, and I know that the carers that asked their questions, whether they were here this evening or they're viewing this in the forum at a later date, will be really grateful for all of your input. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we really look forward to posting this back in the forum, and feel free to join us there if you want to make any comments on the answers. Thanks everybody.